Alberta Innovates and run the water research program for them, everything we did was both multidisciplinary as well as in many cases multi-institutional. Please.
Thank you. I'm going to position a question related to how do we break through the policy wall. My name is Tim Whitford. I'm a councillor from High River. Our town is located on a very complex floodplain. We have been struggling with the province of Alberta to get the floodplain mapped in a meaningful manner for many years. Since 2009, we've embarked on a modeling exercise. We've done a number of models. We're actually doing aquifer modeling for the sustainability of our water supply, as well as dealing with the mitigation of the floods that we experience. We have a 100-year flood every 10 years in there.
Your recurrence is just more often than others.
It is. The frequency is hard to calculate. We have fortunately developed a 2D model of our floodplain. And I say fortunately because all of the gauging stations were lost in the Highwood Basin except for Cataract Creek. So all of the tributary data is gone, the main stem data is gone. Both of the diversions off the Highwood River were badly damaged in this last flood. We've been able to, using a two-dimensional model based on, I'm not sure whether it's high resolution, high definition LiDAR, back into why the east part of our town flooded. And the challenge is getting the government to actually accept these innovative approaches. They seem to want to use a one-size-has-to-fit-all. They mapped High River using a headcrest model in 1992. There's nothing wrong with doing that. The problem is the Highwood River floodplain changed in 1993 and 1994 and so on. So for our purposes, it's we've developed a lot of subdivisions. We have 70% of our town developed on the floodplain, even though it doesn't show on the floodplain based on the headcrest model that was used. So all of those subdivision approvals have been based on that model. So we've done this other exercise so that we can plan a community going forward that doesn't grow on the floodplain. And I guess my question is, over the next year, I think it would be at least a year before we break that policy wall, is how can we get these innovative approaches brought in? I think there's a lot of really good work that's going on. Backing into it, our flood flow on the Highwood River, which is not much bigger than the Elbow, appears to be around 1,600 cubic meters a second. And
that's a lot of water.
Yeah, and it's only typically about a 30-hour duration for High River. But when you make a lake 5 kilometers long that can't drain by itself and it's lined with clay, it's a major issue. And we've been able to determine how that happened and understand why it took so long to pump it out. But breaking that policy barriers so that we can plan better communities, I think, is a real challenge. I've been active in this for about 3 years. The last 2 years I've been working with the Sustainability Environment Committee at the UMA, which is focused on municipalities, obviously. We were promoting strongly the full implementation of the Granville Report. Obviously we weren't very successful in that, so I guess my question to the community going forward is how can we break through these policy barriers and do a better job in the future?
I think it's a wonderful question. It's a difficult question, but it should have a fairly simple or straightforward answer. I think we do have, in some cases, the right principles in the province. In many of the policy pieces, we talk about having place-based solutions, because in water, one size never fits all. So I think part of this is how do we raise these evidence-based policy changes to the level that politicians are willing to make changes based on them. And so this isn't an easy process, but I think the attention that's been shown to this issue, I think the fact that the Premier created this special task force to take a look at it, populated with people who aren't from the government, that they will be listening to communities. I think there's lots we can do to raise the issue, and I think from a purely monetary basis, if there is a special suite of policy instruments that a community needs to be resilient, it's kind of shame on us if we don't adopt them. So I wish you all the best. I did have a question for you, Tim, and it's not meant to be facetious, but the name of the community is High River.
There's a saying, I think it comes out of the Yellowstone Flood Mitigation Committee. Building on the floodplain is kind of like pitching your tent on a freeway when there's no traffic.
Yes.
High River's been doing that since 1885 or so.
Well, and it's not alone in communities around the world. Alberta's not the only place that's susceptible to this. It happens in many places. And before I sit down, unless there's another question, there is a quote attributable to Yogi Berra that many people have used that I think really, really...
It's nicer than the Murphy's Law,
Yeah, it's better than Murphy's Law.
which is much ruder.
I think with that, it's good to start the general Q&A.
Do I get to give
Oh,
Thanks.
Is MMA present?
Yes, I'm here.
She's here.
I'm here. I made it, sorry, I have a 9-year-old son. So
I haven't
hockey
been
tryouts,
favoured
so I
with
was late, so
a terse
apologies.
bio. I know you to be a lady and a lawyer,
Yes.
and I pray you have at it.
Okay, well, I was gonna sit, but I suppose it's, use it, okay. Okay, so we are, I'm here with the Calgary River Communities Action Group, and actually we didn't call ourselves a committee on purpose, because we're like, the committees don't usually get things done fast, and we want to get stuff done fast. We came to be out of a meeting that we had in our community, and Jerry was with us. So we had about 800 people show up, and who were concerned citizens and residents and people who had been impacted by the flood, and who had, it was after the province came out with sort of their initial reaction, and Doug Griffith, I think, made his, announcement. And a number of us felt that there was a big focus on sort of the individual homeowner, and that this was sort of an individual homeowner problem. And our collective thought around that was, this isn't an individual homeowner problem. I got flooded when the zoo flooded, and I flooded when City Hall flooded, and I flooded when the Saddle Dome flooded. So how is this all of a sudden an individual homeowner problem? And so what we did was we came together, we formed an organization. We had 5 founding members, and we have 800 members right now. And we got together and started looking at 3 basic pillars. One of them is prevention, mitigation, flood reduction. The second pillar is the restoration of property and loss and value. And the third pillar is the restoration, or maintaining community integrity. And so there's been a lot of conversation today about the science around what's happening. And the science is a massive, huge part of it. But there's also the social impact part of it. And that's really, and the human impact part of it. And that's what our group has been focused on and dealing with, and trying to help people who have been impacted by the flood advocate for themselves and advocate for their communities, and also help bring together the voice of the community to government at various levels. So after we formed our little groups, we decided that we wanted to get together a group to look at sort of what the prevention elements were. And then we wanted to get together a group to look at policy. And then we also wanted to explore things around the idea of flood insurance. So in terms of the prevention part of our organization, Charles Hanson is here today. I see Charles. We've had a number of people who have a great deal of expertise in engineering and hydrology and planning in our watershed send us a lot of information. And we were sort of sifting through it all, trying to figure out what to do with this information, and then we got teed up with Alan Markin and the Flood Advisory Panel. So Premier Alison Redford appointed Alan Markin and Tino, can't remember Tino's name. Demano. Yeah, and I think Russ McKenzie of Stantec has been working with him on that. And they ended up, we just felt like they were making quite a great deal of progress and moving really quickly. So what we did was we streamed all of sort of the community voice and information and expertise that were coming to us over to Alan's group. And I think a lot of that got incorporated into sort of some of the stuff that they're doing right now. I also want to report that on September 10th, the executive group of our committee got to meet with Alan and his team. And we got a preview of some of the plans and proposals that they have in place. Now, you know, we pressured for this because we thought it was really important that some of this information start getting out there. Naturally, nothing has been committed to necessarily on a provincial level yet or on a city level. What we do know is that we think they're making really great progress. We think there's quite a bit of innovative thought going into some of the things that they're looking at in terms of what you could do for the highwood, for the elbow, for the bow, whether it's upstream or downstream. We know that the city panel and some city water folks are working really closely with their team, and that's, you know, and I think the city's got some really great people on staff, so we're excited by that. And you know, we see ourselves as someone who kind of can just sit back and hold their feet to the fire a bit and say, this is really important stuff. People are making massive decisions about their property. They're making massive decisions about where they're going to live. There's a lot of people who are perhaps on the edge of bankruptcy. There's a lot of people who are suffering massive psychological, you know, stress. And so the sooner we have a little bit of clarity around maybe possible directions, that's a great thing. So that's how we, you know, so we're hoping that they continue to do, that panel continues to do great work, and that, you know, things start to come out of that. So, and we plan on definitely holding our government accountable on that, in that regard. We also want to say, you know, this is a multifaceted problem, and it is very complex, and all of these things need to be taken into account. The watershed, how we plan, land use codes. We're exploring all of these things with, you know, all the different governments that and organizations that we're working with now to figure out how collectively we can minimize the impact. You know, I think we've got something stat that says for every $1 that you spend on prevention, you save $15 in loss. So we've now got, you know, we've got a $5 to $6 billion potentially bill for this. So, you know, that gives us a little bit of leeway on how much money we might want to spend in terms of making sure that this doesn't happen again. And you know, we also have these ideas around that this, I think David said it best, we are all in it together. So there's been some, you know, sometimes you hear things like, oh, well, you people live on the floodplain. And the reality is Calgary was founded at the confluence of the Bow and the Elbow, and our downtown core is on the floodplain. Our stampede grounds are there. It is not a realistic proposal to think that we move the entire core of, you know, the economic engine of Western Canada to somewhere else. So we have to learn